we know that we're producing 300 million tons of plastic every year, half of which is for single-use items, most of which can't be recycled. So that's going to be, those plastic straws, utensils, even things like our coffee cups. Even though those are paper, those are lined with plastic, so those aren't recyclable either. And then things like our water bottles and certain food packaging. And so when it comes to like a plastic water bottle, it actually takes up to 6 times the water that water bottle holds to produce that one plastic water bottle, plus some oil, plus that bottle cap is not recyclable. So we know that we have 8 million tons of plastic that are being dumped into our oceans every year, as well as over 90% of seabirds having plastic pieces in their stomach, and 1 in 3 species of marine mammals being found entangled in marine litter. And that's something that I personally see with the data entry that I help when I volunteer with NOAA, is a lot of that abandoned fishing gear that, different whales, dolphins, and seals and sea lions are getting stuck in, as well as sea turtles. So we know that 90% of the trash that's floating in the ocean is actually composed of plastic. And we know that plastic is not biodegradable. And so I want to talk about the word biodegradable really quickly. When we think of something that biodegrades, we think about like leaf litter in the forest that's going to naturally decompose and break down with microbes and turn back into the soil. And plastic is not going to ever do that, right? It may break apart, but it's going to take hundreds to thousands of years. And really, we're finding that it's just breaking down into really tiny, tiny microscopic pieces. And we'll touch on that word biodegradable and how much it's being thrown around these days and why that's important as a consumer in a little bit. We're also seeing that North Pacific fish are ingesting up to 24,000 tons of plastic per year, and that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is outnumbering marine life, 6 pieces of trash to 1 animal. Over here on the right is a picture of the Wintersburg Channel. So this channel serves the cities of Westminster, Fountain Valley, and Garden Grove in Orange County. So our storm drain system that we have in Orange County helps prevent flooding anytime we have a storm or a rain event. However, that trash is also being carried by that water or wind, or when we have people overwatering and have urban runoff. So here that channel is connecting into the wetlands. You can see that yellow inflatable rope at the top, which is called a trash boom. And so the trash boom is preventing that surface trash from kind of flowing over. However, you can see that plastic bag to the right of it, so it's not 100% effective. So any of that trash that crosses the boom is going to go into the wetlands, into Huntington Harbor, and then into the ocean right at Sunset and Bolsa Chica State Beach. Also, it's only preventing the trash that's floating. And so different types of plastics, depending on the type of chemicals that they're composed of, are going to float or sink. So here we have a graphic kind of showing the different types of common items, what type of plastic it is, and then where that density is in seawater. Just for reference. And so just see a lot of trash. We take students at the Bolsa Chica wetlands. It's an ecological reserve, but there's still tons of trash there. In my neighborhood, in our gutters, as well as at the beach. Anytime I go surfing, I try to, shove any trash in the water in my wetsuit, as well as my rule is picking up 5 pieces of trash when I walk in to the parking lot. I've also peer pressured all of my friends to do the same thing when we surf. So now they say, even when I'm not there, they're doing it too. So.
Hey, Christina, can you go a little bit closer to computer? Because some attendees are just saying it's a little bit far away. A little bit
oh, yeah. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, and then this is some trash from the tide pool. So the tide pool trash makes me extra sad just because so many of these organisms are sessile. They're not going to be moving out of that tide pool, so they're just having to live in that trash. Here we have our top 10 types of trash found at beach cleanups. So I just updated this with Ocean Conservancy's 2019 trash data. And what's interesting is that cigarette butts used to rank #1 the last few years, and food wrappers have actually now jumped to the #1 position. Especially with COVID, we're seeing a lot of food packaging and food wrapping from takeout, different types of containers, as well as a lot of PPE litter like masks and gloves. The albatross that you see was actually made by artist Katie Peck. She made this for our 2018 Coastal Cleanup Day. I believe she collected like 800 to 1,000 cigarette butts just to make that beautiful trash art for us. So we see all this trash at the beach. How does it get there? Are people just littering it all there? Thankfully not. Some people are littering, but we all live in a watershed, just as a reminder. So a watershed is going to be all the land that's above sea level. All of our watersheds drain to the ocean. Even if you don't live near the ocean, you're in the middle of the country, it's all connected. In Orange County, we have 11 different watersheds, the Santa Ana River watershed being the largest. So you can think of, if you've been up to Big Bear and then you drive all the way to Huntington State Beach, that's where that drains. And so 80% of the trash that we see at the beach is getting there from that storm drain system I mentioned earlier. We see that 73% of all of our beach litter worldwide is actually composed of plastic, and that 90% of the plastic in the ocean is carried out by 10 rivers in Asia and Africa. So again, just reiterating how we are all connected, even if it seems like we're far away and you're not near the ocean, it's all connected. And this picture here to the left is Seal Beach. Seal Beach is notorious for just having so much trash, especially after a rain event. You can see a lot of styrofoam, a lot of plastic, a lot of lightweight stuff too, that's going to just be really easily transported anytime it's windy or rainy. What also bums me out about the trash at Seal Beach is that just upstream, we actually have a population of Eastern Pacific green sea turtles that live in the San Gabriel River. So they're residential, they're living there year long, and they're having to live in all of that trash. So just to reiterate our storm drain system, any of that trash or litter that you see on the streets, if it's not getting picked up, it's going to go into our catch basins and our gutters, through our storm drain systems, into our storm channels, ending at the ocean, and oftentimes in a lot of wildlife. So maybe you've heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's actually 2 distinct patches that are bounded by the North Pacific Subtropical Gyre. And a little bit more than half of all that trash is actually coming from land-based activities in North America and Asia, versus 20% of that trash coming from water-based activities. We're also finding that 70% of the marine debris is actually sinking to the bottom, depending on what type of plastic it is. And when I first heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch when I was younger, I imagined, a Texas-sized like trash island that could be walked on. However, it's more of just like a giant plastic soup of just lots of trash, tiny trash, different types of debris all throughout the water column. So here's a nice graphic from NOAA just kind of showing those two patches being bound together. Unfortunately, this isn't our only garbage patch. Every ocean we have has its own. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is just the largest and most well-known. So I talked a little bit earlier about how our plastic pieces that are left in the environment are not going to just biodegrade back into the soil. They're actually just going to keep breaking down into microplastics. So microplastics are small pieces of plastic that are less than 5 millimeters in length. We even have smaller microplastics that can be 0.1 micrometer to 1 millimeter, referred to as nanoplastics. The picture on the right kind of shows you microfibers. So we have organic microfibers coming from our organic materials like wool and cotton and silk, versus those microfibers that we're concerned about are from synthetic clothing material. And you can see that they just have such a such a smaller diameter than those organic materials do. And so because of this, when we wash our clothes, unfortunately, the abrasion of that when we're washing them, it goes through to our, our wastewater treatment processes, but they're just so tiny, they're unable to be filtered. So here on the left are pictures of tiny pieces of microplastics that I actually sorted when I used to work at an environmental consulting company. So I used to take sediment samples along the coast, and we would be sorting for different types of, fish eggs or different types of larvae. However, I kept seeing these tiny microfibers and tiny pieces of plastic and trash, and was pretty horrified. That was my first experience with microplastics. So I decided to keep them, and I still have them. And again, here's another example of microfibers. So you can see that blue microfiber and then another smaller black microfiber to the right. And this is actually from Charles Moore, who discovered the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and is also the founder of Algalita. So according to the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, microplastics are being found everywhere. They're in both freshwater and marine systems. They're on the shore, at the surface of the water, all the way through the water column, in our deepest trenches, in ice sediment samples from the Arctic and Antarctica. They're in our food web and in things like beer and packaged tea, table salt, tap water, and bottled water, as well as air pollution. I also recently heard on a podcast that they referred to microplastic rain being the new acid rain. So we're seeing this stuff everywhere. The picture on the right is a good example of nurdles, which is how plastic is transported. So these tiny little plastic pellets are, carried around throughout the country. They're then melted down and turned into whatever the plastic item is. However, sometimes there's spills, or, if there's an accident or these get out of the facility, these are just going to get into our waterways and into our environment, and they look a lot like fish eggs and other items that wildlife is going to be foraging for as well. A lot of these plastics also give off certain smells, and smells that like birds are attracted to of what they would actually forage for as well. So they look like their food and it smells like their food. I'm always concerned that when people find out that there's microplastics in tap water, that they're going to want to buy more bottled water. However, this study shows all the different microplastic concentrations by brand, and buying plastic bottled water is just contributing to this problem more, right? It's causing the demand for more of that plastic. There's more microplastics in it, and these water bottle companies they're also, marking up those water bottles by 4,000%, trying to sell it to you. And I know some people don't really like the taste of tap water, but you can get like a charcoal filter if you don't like the taste, or these companies that have different flavors of, water, they all taste unique. It's just because they have their own mineral recipe. So you could also, look into the minerals and maybe order some if you like that taste a lot. Our sources of microplastics are either going to be primary or secondary sources. So microbeads are polyethylene plastic, little beads that are added to a lot of our cosmetics and personal care products. So you can see in that picture on the right, some companies that are, we're utilizing those little plastic beads versus companies using natural exfoliants. I use a face scrub from Lush that's using coffee grounds. So that makes a really nice exfoliant. And luckily the Obama administration actually passed a law banning this and stopping this. So we shouldn't see this in cosmetics or personal care products anymore. But just a reminder that as a consumer, you should always do your research, check the ingredients, and look before you're buying. And then again, those microfibers coming from synthetic textiles like nylon, polyester, spandex, acrylic, rayon, all of our comfy leggings and clothes that I personally like so much. Nurdles, again, how that plastic is transferred, and then also things like tire dust and marine coating and city dust also contributes to microplastic primary sources. Our secondary sources are going to be any larger plastic items or trash, a water bottle, plastic toys on the beach that are eventually breaking down through photo degradation, so from the sunlight and oxygen over time. I also just found out in a webinar yesterday that when our plastic is photo degrading, it's because it's a petroleum derivative, it's also releasing carbon emissions. So plastic's just like the gift that keeps on giving sometimes. Okay, so what wildlife is being impacted by plastic? We know that it can cause mechanical blockages if wildlife is eating it or if they're entangled in it. But it's also causing behavioral changes and has chemical consequences as well. So there was a study done recently where they were feeding fish microplastics and it actually changed their foraging behavior. They also have seen that feeding different test species microfibers versus microbeads had different impacts, and that the microfibers, because of their shape, actually had more negative impacts and significant changes versus those tiny micro beads that are smaller and rounder. Those chemicals that are associated with plastics are releasing toxic chemicals like BPA and phthalates, as well as can absorb pollutants like PCBs and pesticides. We know that more than 220 species are being impacted by microplastics alone, and then at least 700 marine species are impacted by plastic pollution altogether. So that's anything from our tiny little zooplankton all the way to our megafauna like whales, sharks, and dolphins. There was a study in February of 2019 that looked at 50 stranded marine mammals. All of them had microplastics. Most of those microplastics were composed of those microfibers. A lot of those microfibers were nylon. So maybe coming from like ghost fishing gear, that abandoned fishing gear out in the ocean, and then as well as like synthetic clothing textiles, and then also, broken food wrapping and plastic bottles. And it wasn't confirmed if these microplastics were the cause of death. However, those animals all had high levels of those plastic associated toxins. Oceana just came out with a recent report that found that 88% of animals that have been recorded with plastic, either being entangled in plastic or ingesting plastic, are from our threatened and endangered species list, which is sad and concerning since those animals are already so vulnerable. In 2019, we also had a few sperm whales wash ashore dead with plastic. So this was a sperm whale that washed ashore on the Philippines with over 80 pounds of plastic in its stomach. Not too long after that, there was another sperm whale that washed ashore dead in Italy with 50 pounds of plastic in her stomach, and she was also pregnant. What's interesting too about these sperm whales with so much plastic in their stomach is that they're really deep diving marine mammals that are using their echolocation to hunt for things like squid, but yet they're still finding all of that plastic too. So this kind of begs the question if we are being impacted by plastic. We know that so many of these marine species are being found with microplastics. A lot of them are, fish or species that we eat, as well as in the food web. So we've seen that a study done feeding laboratory mice microplastics found that it accumulated in their kidney and in their liver, as well as having high levels of stress molecules, one that could possibly be toxic to the brain. We know that a lot of these plastics also contain those phthalates and BPA or BPA replacements. So BPA replacements are, instead of the BPA molecule, it's replaced with either an S or an F molecule. So it would be BPS or BPF. So when you're at the store and there's like plastic bottles or plastic Tupperware, whatever it is, a lot of times now I'm seeing those stickers that say BPA free, but all that means is that it just has a different molecule replacement. And unfortunately, it functions exactly the same as BPA, if not worse. From some studies. And so again, we know that these are, disruptive to our, they're endocrine disruptors. which is super important for our hormone system, which is really important for, a lot of our body functions. They can also increase child obesity and cardiovascular disease. We know too that when plastic is breaking down and photodegrading, it can absorb bacteria and viruses, as well as PCBs and pesticides, which are known carcinogens and are known to have adverse health effects. And then we know that a lot of these microplastics are being passed up the food web. There was a study that came out last year, I think after they found microplastics in human fecal samples, saying that we're all eating about a credit card's weight worth of microplastics a week. I also just heard recently in a webinar that they are estimating that we're eating about half a pound of microplastics a year, and also breathing in half a pound of microplastics a year. And so this is the crazy no plastic lady who I follow on social media, and just kind of showing some examples of, just how common these plastic items are in our lives, and especially when it comes to things that we're using with our food, things that babies and toddlers are using and what they're putting in their mouth. But so really, we need a lot more research to see how this is impacting our health, and we need a lot of long-term research to just kind of see if eating these tiny microplastics little over time, is impacting us or not. We also need a standardized method for collecting and comparing microplastic research. But we do have some really cool human innovation. So on the right, you can see those cactus leaves. Researcher Sandra Ortiz from Mexico has actually created a real sustainable biodegradable plastic, and I will say biodegradable because it will actually decompose in less than a month, which is a great breakdown time. And so she's able to just use the leaves of this cactus, so it's very sustainable. The rest of the plant is staying alive. And then she's juicing the leaves, adding non-toxic chemicals, and is actually able to create two types of different plastics, one that is hard and brittle, and then one that is more flimsy and flexible. And it only takes her about 11 days. So hopefully we're able to scale this to industry, make it faster, and then maybe that, that flimsy, flexible plastic could replace a lot of our plastic food packaging. We also have on the left these baby legs, which are like little microplastic trawls that you can make at home. The Clear Laboratory, with that information below, has excellent instructions on how to make these and protocol on how you can use them. We actually had a group of high school students last year from Costa Mesa High School make 2 sets of these to compare microplastics in Upper Newport Bay Ecological Reserve. And I believe it only took them like less than an hour to make both of these, and they spent, $10. So they made one to test the water site below one of the storm drains, and then another to test the water off of the dock. And so once they would pass all their water through these baby legs, they would then pick apart any debris they found and then start analyzing under the microscope. So you can see this red and blue microfiber here, and then another blue microfiber here. We had a lot of microfibers and then a lot of tiny little plastic pieces as well. There's the company 4Ocean that is doing really cool stuff. For every bracelet they sell, they pick up a pound of plastic, and they also have this really cool boat with those arms that you can see that's able to just kind of take in all of that surface trash really efficiently. Boy Onslaught, who created the Ocean Cleanup Project when he was 17. It took a lot of time and a lot of money, but he finally had his first successful haul of, taking this trash and plastic from the ocean in the fall of 2019. So his first attempt was unsuccessful, but they went back to the drawing board, figured stuff out. And again, he's utilizing the currents to bring that plastic in, and then they're able to retrieve that and then actually upcycle that plastic to create products with longevity. So things like sunglasses and hats, things we're not really washing that supporters can buy to help these efforts continue. We We also have a new species, I'm actually not sure if it's new or not, but they discovered this species of bacteria in Japan a few years ago, and it's actually able to eat PET plastic by having these two different types of enzymes that attach to it. Once the bacteria consumes the plastic, you're just left with like a little thumb-sized piece of plastic pellet. And we're hoping that this will really revolutionize our plastic recycling industry, since most plastic is not being recycled at all. And a lot of it is ending in the landfill, even in California, even here in Orange County. So I'm really excited to see where this bacteria goes regarding plastic recycling. We also had Fionn from Ireland in 2019 win the Google Science Fair Award. He was 18 years old and figured out a way to actually remove microplastics from water. So by using oil and a magnetite powder, he created a ferrofluid that the microplastics kind of bind to. And then he's able to just use a magnetic wand essentially to stir in the water, and all of the microplastics just go straight to that. And so after 1,000 tests, this was 87% effective in removing those microplastics. It was most effective in actually removing microfibers. So hopefully they're able to scale this technology to implement at wastewater treatment facilities. So that way we can actually prevent all those microfibers from going into our environment. And there is a pretty cool video kind of showing this process. So if we have time, I can show that, but here's a nice visual for you. And just a good reminder too, that it doesn't matter, what age you are, you're never too young to be part of the solution. Some more ways we can also just help prevent microfiber pollution would be trying to avoid fast fashion, the cheap clothes that are made with those synthetic materials, or when buying them, shopping secondhand or doing a clothing swap with friends. Maybe utilizing those organic materials more, like cotton, jeans, and hemp. Washing your clothes in cooler water at a lower spin rate so there's less abrasion is helpful. And then maybe when it comes to things that you have that are fully 100% polyester, like a bathing suit or your leggings or workout clothes, you can mitigate those microfibers from, leaching by washing that by hand and then hang drying it. That's, it's free. We can all do that. So that's a great way to help mitigate. We also just want to make sure we're utilizing eco-friendly detergents. We're not washing our clothes with hard objects that's going to make more abrasions happen. And then, of course, avoiding any cosmetics or personal care items that have those micro beads, and just trying to avoid unnecessary plastic wherever we can. There's also some really cool washing machine options as well as water. So the Coraball and the Guppy Friend are two portable options that are able to help kind of retain some of those microfibers. The Coraball is mimicking our corals and how they filter feed. And then the Guppy Friend is actually a bag where you're putting those synthetic clothes into the bag and then into your washer. And both of those items are like around $35, give or take. And then a permanent option is the Lint Lover filter system, which is going to have the best retention rate and again is permanent. So it's also going to be a bit more expensive, I think maybe around like $120. And then again, if you're concerned about your tap water, there's clearly filtered and tap water that both have portable options like a Brita filter, or they also have options where you can connect them to your sink or your refrigerator. However, in northern and central Orange County, we have really good clean drinking water. We're really lucky. We have the Orange County Sanitation District and Orange County Water District and their groundwater replenishment system. And so because of that technology and that process, it actually is it's filtering out those microplastics and microfibers. So maybe you're like, what else can I do? So I'm sure we've all heard of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. These are in that order by what is most important and what is most helpful, right? So if we can reduce the amount of plastic we're buying, super helpful. If we're then reusing whatever we have and not throwing it away, also super helpful. And then recycling is that last R. But some new R's are refusing and repurposing. So refusing is, saying no to plastic utensils or straws whenever you're eating out. practice makes perfect by making this a habit. So, I used to forget to say no, no straw all the time. And I also found that I used to say like, oh, no straw, please. And I think that the please that I would say kind of triggered the worker to like not forget. So I found that saying no straw, no thank you has been more helpful. And then before throwing something away, maybe getting creative and finding a way to repurpose it or make something out of something that would normally end up in the landfill, like this patio set made out of tires. And so when it comes to recycling, plastic at least, definitely check that number in the little, green triangle symbol we're all used to seeing. That number actually correlates to the type of plastic material that it's made out of and what those, those specific chemicals are. Unfortunately, recycling isn't standardized in this country, so all of our facilities are different. They do not all recycle the same numbers. Most of them do not recycle all of these numbers or even half of them. And some cities are taking all of your trash and they're sorting the trash from the recycles. Some cities are not doing that, and you need to specifically recycle and then also have your trash service. So it unfortunately falls on the consumer right now to, call your local trash and recycling facility to see what numbers they actually accept. Because I know sometimes we want to be helpful and we're like, oh, this is plastic, I'm just going to put it in the recycling bin. If it's actually a type of plastic that that facility doesn't take, this wishful recycling isn't helpful. It's actually a lot more harmful and hurtful because it slows their process down. If it's a type of, plastic film or bag, a lot of times that can actually jam their system. And so we want to try to prevent that from happening. And so a good rule of thumb is that the higher the number, the less likely it is to being recycled. So I always try to consider buying the alternatives to plastic. So, the glass or the can option. However, if it's something maybe like, Tylenol, it's going to come in plastic, then I'll try to find the lowest number to, know that at least that is being recycled. So you can see that again, those single-use plastic items like those utensils fall under the number 7 or the other category. So those are not being recycled. I learned from Orange Coast College, they have a good recycling program. And even in Orange County, we're only recycling like numbers 1 through 3. There's just not a lot of industry to recycle those other numbers right now. And good reminders for recycling is, to rinse out the item. If it's a ketchup bottle or a mayonnaise jar, you don't have to use a bunch of soap, but just to rinse with water, letting it dry. And then again, things that are lined with plastic, like those coffee cups, not recyclable, as well as things like cardboard, like a pizza box. As soon as that gets greasy, it's also not recyclable anymore. And so please always recycle whenever you can, especially things like glass, paper, those cartons, and metals. Aluminum cans are a great option. If maybe you're buying soda, buying the can instead of the bottle, because it only takes 45 to 60 days for that can to be recycled into a brand new can, versus that plastic milk jug will never turn into a brand new plastic milk jug. It'll have to be, shredded down, melted, brand new virgin plastic is going to have to be added. And then oftentimes that material is then just going to become insulation or filler somewhere. And then if you live in Orange County, the OC recycling and waste website's actually super helpful. They have a whole list of every city and then their phone number for their trash and recycling providers. So you can call and figure out what numbers are actually being recycled where you live. They also have a recycling guide that you can, kind of search like, oh, hair ties, is this recyclable, or plastic bottle caps? And so it'll give you some answers there as well. So other things you can do when it comes to reusing, I really like eating yogurt, but I felt bad about all the single-use waste of all those plastic cups. So I decided to buy like in bulk, like a large thing of just Greek yogurt, and then using my own containers as Tupperware, and just adding my own jam and granola to kind of customize it. So you can really get creative when it comes to reusing a lot of things. The jar on the left used to be like a relish jar. I have so many glass jars now, from like pasta sauce or pickle jars. I use a lot of them as drinking glasses or vases. You can reuse the glass jars if you make candles. They're good for plant propagation if you're into gardening. As well as I had a girlfriend spray paint a pickle jar and then add a little animal topper to it, and then gave them away as gifts as like dog and cat treat jars. So that was a really creative option. You know, we didn't always have plastic as a society. So we can definitely go back to basics in that regard and just keep plastic where it's necessary, like for medical purposes and certain technologies, but a lot of everyday life, we can do without it. So there are tons of plastic alternatives and zero waste options now. We have a lot of great refill stores. My favorite refill store in Orange County is Eco Now. They're located in Costa Mesa. And the great thing too about these refill stores is if there's one that's not super close to you, they all ship plastic free as well. So I highly encourage checking those out. Besides a reusable water bottle and, coffee tumbler, I really like to always keep my to-go utensils with me wherever I go. We have so many different types of straw options now. I have my chopsticks, so I just try to keep these in my bag with me at all times. These are some ideas for the bathroom. Switching to like a body bar instead of, liquid soap that's going to be coming in plastic. Same with like shampoo and conditioner bars, or there's also a company called Plain Products where they're using like metal cans, so it's still a liquid, and then they ship and refill for you. Bamboo toothbrush, there's toothpaste tablets, mouthwash tablets. Lush's materials for a lot of their face washes do come in like that little black clay pot that you see. But those little black pots, so they are plastic, but what I like about Lush is that they take them back and recycle them. And if you save 5 of them, you get your own, you get a free face mask. And then a lot of things too with this is that you're also saving money like over time. So that razor is bamboo and metal. And now all I have to buy is those little replaceable razor blades that are super cheap. Versus razors are pretty expensive when I was buying those, a couple years ago.
And Cristina, we need you to add some of those ideas to our sustainable gift guide.
You got it.
I'm going to hit you up later this week.
Perfect.
They're awesome. I love Lush too.
And so these are some options for tea. I was always a big tea drinker. And when I found out that most of those tea packaging bags are lined with plastic and that in one mug of tea, there's billions of microplastics and nanoplastics.
No.
I was pretty horrified. So I highly recommend switching to loose leaf tea or seeking out the few brands that do actually make 100% like paper and cotton bags. So those do exist. There's just not a lot of them. But these are options for loose leaf tea. And then this is just some examples of what I use when I'm traveling. So I like to reuse a lot of small containers for maybe my toothpaste tabs. There's silk floss, different like jelly containers for my Tylenol. And then I have my designated Ziploc bag for my shampoo bars. So the good thing about Ziploc bags being plastic is that they're gonna last forever. So that's a really easy thing that you can do at home too to reduce like what you're buying is just, I stopped buying Ziploc bags in 2018. My boyfriend and I have maybe like 20 Ziploc bags in our apartment now that we just keep washing and reusing. And then that also helps decrease that demand at the store of where they're needing to put new Ziploc bags there, right? Okay, so as a consumer, it's very important to be aware of greenwashing, especially now. A lot of companies and brands are trying to jump on the, eco train, that their product is eco-friendly. However, there's no federal regulation when it comes to product labeling, unfortunately. So this is really frustrating because then again, it falls on the consumer to do the research and to be diligent about what you're buying. So the earth-rated dog poop bags here in the middle, they say they're earth-rated, they're green, they look like they're eco-friendly, but really it's just that box that's going to be recyclable because those bags are 100% plastic still. Versus on the right, these biodegradable bags are made out of corn maize. And so they actually can decompose within 1 to 3 months, depending on environmental conditions. And you can see that they have multiple legitimate certifications there on the box versus the other company does not. TUV Austria is my go-to certification that I'm looking for. They certify products if they are marine biodegradable, industrial compostable, or even at-home compostable. And so we did in the United States actually just get a certified compostable company called the Biodegradable Products Institute. So they're now certifying products if it decomposes within 120 days. But unfortunately, that's just for an industrial composting facility. So I really urge at-home compostable, because not all of our landfills have the specific requirements and conditions to allow industrial composting to happen because of the lack of light or oxygen, or, it requires really specific conditions. So I urge you to kind of, start to research things or just look at the labels, maybe look for certification. That's a good way to prevent greenwashing from happening. And then especially with things like we've had a lot of wipes, those disposable cleaning wipes, face wipes, makeup remover wipes, baby wipes, all those wipes, a lot of them say flushable. None of them are flushable. We've taken our students to the sanitation district so many times for wonderful field trips, and those wipes are 100% not flushable. They do not decompose. They will clog your pipes. They then, clog our sewer system, which is just costing us more money in return. So please do not flush those. Okay, I also talked about abandoned fishing gear or ghost fishing gear being a big problem with a lot of our plastic pollution in the ocean. So please check where your seafood comes from and how it is being caught if you eat seafood. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of unsustainable seafood out there. Noah's rule of thumb is if you can, try to just buy seafood that's caught from the US, because we are leading the way with sustainable seafood. If you're buying, you can look for that little blue sticker, the certified sustainable seafood.org. And then I highly recommend utilizing Monterey Bay Aquarium's free mobile seafood watch app. This is a really great app that tells you the status of the fishery of the seafood you're looking for, if it's sustainable, and then if it's not sustainable, they'll give you a better alternative of something that is. More ways you can help are by advocating, signing petitions, writing letters or calling politicians, and voting. And also as a consumer, voting with your dollar. So demanding change, showing those companies, that we're refusing that single-use plastic, we don't want it anymore. Encouraging your local, favorite restaurant or coffee shop to maybe ditch that single-use plastic materials they're using. They can switch from plastic spoons and forks to those little wooden ones, or maybe allowing reusables. I know it felt like 10 steps backwards when COVID first hit with no reusables being allowed anywhere, but we're seeing that, if anything, the virus lasts longer on plastic versus reusable materials. So most stores should allow you to bring your reusable bag and reusable produce bag. And it's actually like the law. So if they don't know, it's just this, the store manager not knowing, but you are allowed to bring your reusable bags here in California. And educating is so huge. So if you've learned one thing from this presentation, you could share with a friend or family member. That would be super helpful. These are two quotes that I really like. So in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. And we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We just need millions of people doing it imperfectly. So sharing any tidbit of anything about reducing or reusing is so helpful. Here's a list of some helpful websites, especially with trying to find your local recycling facility. Earth 911 is really helpful for that wherever you're located. And then the OC Waste and Recycling is that website I mentioned earlier if you live in Orange County. And then I have created Plastic Me Not as a website and social media just to kind of provide more resources about plastic pollution, to share more awareness, and you can check that out later if you would like. And then if you're interested in getting involved with Orange County, we have Orange County Coastkeeper. We have a lot of different programs. We have volunteer and internship opportunities, even virtually right now. Unfortunately, we're not able to host our monthly beach cleanups at the moment, but we do have a virtual beach cleanup program or neighborhood cleanup program just wherever you are. So you can check out our website for that. And if you participate, we do have prizes to give away too. Hopefully we'll be able to do our beach cleanups again soon. And thank you so much for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you. We have a lot of questions, and we're just going to do a couple, like one or two, because we want Michelle to, from Surfrider Foundation in Newport, to share what they're doing in the area of plastics, because it's another fantastic organization that we love working with, and that's Climate Reality. We are very inclusive. We like to work with a lot of different partners and, you know, come up with solutions together and, you know, help each other, you know, solve the climate crisis and solve the plastics crisis. Now, we have, the chat is on fire, everybody. There's a lot of questions that are coming out here too. And so let's see. There was a question about, you know, the microplastics and health and cancer and things like that. You know, we know the link between pollution and health and how it's impacting us, but tell us a little bit of anything that you've got so far on that area. And if you want to stop sharing so we can see you, that's great too.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so the Southern California Coastal Research Water Project, also known as SCORP, they're in Costa Mesa, and they actually just had a really amazing microplastic webinar series. I believe it's 6 different series, and they're all recorded and on their website. So that has a lot of current research that's being done regarding, you know, how this could be impacting human health. That was a topic of like pretty much every week that they did that. A lot of it is that we just need more research. We don't know what's really happening. I think a lot of it is going to be acute toxicology research. So again, like the tiny amounts of plastics and chemicals that we are exposed to every day over time, like how is that going to impact us in, 20, 30 years from now, especially with things that are endocrine disruptors. Those phthalates are found in things like receipt paper. So if you're touching receipt paper, your skin actually absorbs those phthalates directly. So I would try to avoid that, avoiding please don't microwave anything in plastic. I would really avoid that. That's gonna, kind of just leach a lot of those chemicals as well. And there's a really good podcast. I'll add it to the chat, but it's called Ways Plastic is Wrecking Your Health. And so there's a really wonderful PhD candidate who goes on to talk about just kind of all these things and issues and concerns. It's on the Genius Life. So I'll add that to the chat as well. But unfortunately, we just need more research. So that is like, the fact that we need long-term research is why I think it should kind of urge everybody to, I don't want to wait for that research to come out in 20 years to see what those negative impacts are. I think it's like, that should be a motivation of like, oh, wow, we don't know how this is going to impact us. So maybe we should just try to stop and reduce and prevent this from even happening.
There's a comment from Lisa Swanson who says, I'm really surprised by the stat regarding 90% of ocean plastics from rivers in Asia and Africa. Any ideas on how we in the US can help with that?
There's quite a few really cool companies and initiatives. I believe one of them is called Plastic Pollutes and Plastic Bank, where they're trying to help, create the recycling infrastructure so those countries can actually recycle. And so you have a lot of companies trying to, take that reclaimed ocean plastic, turn it into other products, resell that, and or also create the actual facilities that are able to do that. And then the Plastic Bank Corporation, that is where they're trying to have basically like plastic vending ATM machines where people can, you know, take their trash and plastic, put it in that machine, it's collecting it, and then they're able to get, you know, currency or, you know, whatever it is to go buy food or buy what they need. But I think a lot of it is just the countries that they lack the infrastructure. They don't have like the, you know, the management that we do to really, you know, take it and, you know, have a landfill or a recycling center.
Right. What about, Michaela asks, hey, Michaela, it's great to see you here. What about plastic food storage, even with BPA, and do they leak harmful substances into us?
So if this is for like at home, I really highly recommend just ditching all of the plastic like Tupperware. I'm in the process of still doing that. I still have some, you know, hard plastic Tupperware, but you know, I'm really trying to switch everything over to Pyrex and to other materials. I reuse a lot of those pasta sauce jars as like food storage materials too,
Yeah,
especially for like lunch or something like meal prepping. Those can actually be really helpful. Definitely when if you're heating stuff up in plastic in their microwave, like that is definitely leaching stuff into your food. I wish I knew more about like how much or again what the impacts are of that, but I would avoid that. When it comes to like food packaging with things, especially that we're buying, you know, from fast food or things that restaurant food is coming in plastic, a lot of frozen food, things like that. I don't know what, you know, those impacts are or how, you know, if those chemicals are sitting long enough around that food to absorbing it or if it's not enough time to do that.
Yeah.
But great question.
And a lot of people are asking about, you know, the move to, you know, have restaurants switch to more eco-friendly things. So it kind of leads into Surfrider because they have this ocean-friendly restaurant campaign. So I would love to introduce Michelle, who is with the Newport Surfrider chapter. And Michelle, I don't know if you can start to share your screen, but everybody stay with us if you want to ask questions because Christina's going to hang out. Michelle's just doing a short, you know, 5 to 10 minute presentation so we can learn more about, you know, how to work together with Surfrider right in our own backyard.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michelle Jerome, and I'm the chair of the Newport Beach chapter of Surfrider Foundation. And I'm just going to give a short talk on ways that we are reducing plastic pollution. So the mission of Surfrider is the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean, waves, and beaches for all people through a powerful activist network. The way it works is in the United States, there are many chapters across the country, and there's chapters and there's also student clubs. So if you are at a high school or college, you can actually start a Surfrider student club. Our core areas are plastic pollution, ocean protection, beach access, coastal preservation, and clean water. And in the Newport Beach chapter area, we have 590 members about. So what do we do? So one of the things our chapter does, and most chapters do, is have beach cleanups. So here are some photos from happier times because we're not having beach cleanups right now. We had to stop beach cleanups in March and we started to have a few. We had 2 in the last 2 months, but because of COVID cases, because they're rising again, we are suspending them. As you can see, our beach cleanups would have hundreds of people sometimes. And in the bottom right corner, you can see we have one of our high school club members doing data collection. So we collect data on what our volunteers collect. So you're probably aware when you do beach cleanup, you can't collect everything on the beach. There's things that are going to go into the ocean. We can only do so much, but one of the things that beach cleanups are great for is teaching people the fate of their trash and what types of items keep on showing up. So despite the styrofoam ban in Newport Beach, we still find foam at every waterway we're at, for instance. And then we also find lots of different types of plastic. So the key is to prevent that plastic from getting there in the first place, and that involves making better choices. So one of the ways to reduce plastic pollution is education. So teaching about lifestyle changes, and there are a lot of great ideas from the last presentation. And we share our beach cleanup data, so more on that later. Sharing scientific research, as in microplastics and health effects. And another great resource is beachopedia.com, which is, it's like Wikipedia for topics about the beach and oceans. So that's a great resource. I highly recommend it. And they're written by people with knowledge about the subjects. Our program that targets plastic pollution is called Rise Above Plastic. So I recommend going to the website that's at the bottom of the slide. So this is collected data for the 2019 beach cleanups throughout the US that were conducted by Surfrider chapters. So this year, Surfrider wrote a beach cleanups report. So you can find this data on the Surfrider website, and there's also other information and graphics. And this is similar to what you saw in the last presentation. So there's different organizations collecting data from beach cleanups, and you can see just the enormity of the situation. You know, all of these plastic fragments, food wrappers, cigarette butts, which is alarming because cigarette butts are illegal on a lot of beaches, but there's just so much plastic waste out there. So moving on from education, another piece of addressing plastic pollution is legislation. So if you go to the Surfrider website and go to the campaigns page, you can search and see what different chapters and Surfrider HQ are doing in terms of legislating plastic reduction. So in California, there are 10 active pollution campaigns, and here are just a few of them. I'm going to move on. And the last piece is voluntary programs. So these can include things that you're doing organically on your own at work or school. So there are some schools that are installing water refill stations so that students can fill up their reusable water bottles, and that's great. And workplace, there are many changes that can happen there too. And Ocean-Friendly Restaurants is our voluntary program for restaurants, and it focuses on not only reducing plastic waste, but also other things like sustainable fish. And so we'll play a video after the next slide. And my last slide, this is to tell you about a talk that we're having next week. So I recommend going to our website. There are some links in the chat box, and I'll put another one in there that takes you to our webpage. So next week, we're having a talk from Dr. Shannon Statham, and she's going to be talking about monitoring rising sea levels from space.
Wow. I mean, that just looks fantastic. I've already signed up too. So I'm going to share my screen because I'm going to share the video so if you can stop sharing your screen, then I'll thank you. And we're really excited about the Ocean Friendly Restaurants project. Here we go.
The ocean, covering 2/3 of our planet. It provides life, sustenance, and over 70% of our planet's oxygen. But now, it's estimated that over 5 trillion pieces of plastic are floating in the ocean, littering our beaches, killing wildlife, and ending up in our food chain. To make the shift to a more sustainable future, it has to start with businesses and the consumer. The Surfrider Foundation's Ocean Friendly Restaurants program is tackling these issues head on by encouraging restaurants to make simple changes that collectively make a huge impact.
I'm Ed Kenny, chef owner of Town Hospitality Group. We operate 4 ocean-friendly restaurants: Kaimaki Superette, Town, Mahina and Sons, and Mud and Water. We initially had one restaurant. We thought, God, if one makes this difference, what will 2, 3, or 4 do? We've actually seen our impact multiply exponentially.
The idea of using something for one time that lasts forever just makes no sense. So slowly we're trying to phase out single-use plastic, along with all the environmental hazards associated with plastic pollution. There are also serious health issues. And you have so much plastic in the ocean that's breaking down. Sea creatures are eating this and it's bioaccumulating up through the food chain and ending up on our dinner plates.
Everyone in this world is using plastic. Wherever you are, you can see it showing up on the beaches. So it's a global problem. Businesses have started to address this issue. They use alternative materials and try to reduce their plastic amount.
I'm Jack Johnson, and as someone who loves the ocean, I support Surfrider Foundation's Ocean Friendly Restaurants program. It's a great way to learn about restaurants that are eliminating single-use plastic from their practices and supporting sustainable seafood.
So what makes a restaurant ocean friendly? Reusable tableware when dining in. Proper recycling practices are followed. No straw unless you ask for it. No styrofoam at all. And no plastic bags for to-go orders.
It's been an amazing experience working with Surfrider Foundation in the Ocean Friendly Restaurant program. We've done everything from working with consumers and businesses, and we've really stepped up to the plate, and now we're working on legislation. Changing policy and pushing policy forward really is going to be the thing that saves us from ourselves. So ultimately, this is what we need to do in order to save the planet.
Where we shop, what we eat, what we buy, and how we run business can help create the change we need to keep our ocean healthy and thriving. Surfrider's Ocean Friendly Restaurants program is taking the lead on these issues, encouraging restaurants to move to more environmentally friendly practices. To find an ocean-friendly restaurant in your local community and to learn more, visit surfrider.org.
I know she loves the sunrise.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Stop sharing my screen. It's making me hungry as well. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Are there ways, Michelle, that we can, one of the things that is so restorative when you're kind of in, lockdown mode, if you will, and we're limiting your activities and stuff. Can we do our own, like just on our own, go out and, go to the beach and pick up things? Are there any tips that you'll be able to share with us so we can share them with everybody who attended and RSVP'd?
Oh yeah, let me put a page in the chat box. I have to find it, but we are promoting solo cleanups, and you can send us your data. So you don't have to go to the beach to do this. You can do it from your house, and it'll still help the beach, and it'll make your neighborhood look great too. So let me find
Yeah, please share that as well. And I mean, there's a group of Girl Scouts who are on this that are doing a project on plastics. And I just want to encourage a lot of young people to think about creating their own Surfrider chapter at their schools. I attended some of your events, Michelle, and it just, the students and what they're working on was crazy. It's like ocean friendly gardens, I think they're also planning at the schools.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, even while the schools are closed, they're able to do limited activities to check on the garden and be mindful and thoughtful. I think that's wonderful. And it just breaks my heart that over 50% of turtles are eating plastic bags. We don't need this. And our culture, we used a lot of glass and jars and all of that kind of stuff for a long time. We don't need the convenience of this. We can have our own cloth bags. And it just breaks my heart too, that now when you go to a store, they prevent you from using your bags because of COVID. I mean, the only way you can do it is that you check out, and then I hang outside of Trader Joe's and bag my stuff myself now.
I've been bagging my own too. I bring in my own bag. But when you go to some countries in Europe, you have to bag on your own anyway. So
yeah, so why not?
It's
a nice mindful practice. Lisa Ryder works with waste management, and she's here tonight as well. And she was saying that I guess Target has some locations that allow you to bring your plastic bags to recycle. Lisa, is that right?
So here's the deal. I was trying to mention it in the chat. Some of the stores like Target, actually most of the big box stores have film plastics because everything that comes into the stores is on giant pallets, and it's all wrapped in film plastic. And so they have to recycle their film plastic, but there's really no markets right now. So a lot of them have to pay to get rid of it. They don't want to take your plastic bags, but they'll do it as a service. So if you say, that's why you don't see them in the front of the stores anymore. Because stores used to get money for them. But now the markets are just decimated. We used to ship everything to China. And, speaking about the garbage patch, they say that some of the plastics that we used to ship to China thinking they're getting recycled might have actually ended up into the Pacific Ocean. So anyway, so all the plastics we're having a lot of difficulty recycling. We only do 1, 2s, and 5s, no markets for number 4. And bags, I just say reuse them whenever you can. I also wanted to bring up real quickly about the dog poop bags. So when they sit in a landfill, they take a really long time. Even food in a landfill takes a very long time to decompose. So the bags are going to maybe take, they're still going to take a long time. So honestly, I would just use a plastic bag and save your money and put it towards something more worthwhile. If you want to compost your dog poop, you can, but you don't want to use that finished compost on your vegetables and your edible plants. So they are compostable, and dog poop is compostable. It just, you just want to make sure it's not something you're going to eat, because there are heavy metals and things in dog poop. So anyway, not to go off on,
that's good. And I hope you'll share some of your, composting videos too, Lisa. They're really
I can stick them on the thing here as well.
On the chat as well.
Okay.
And we've got several Girl Scouts working on a cool project. They're saying that they're doing their Bronze Award and saving the ocean from plastic and installing refill water bottle stations at the school. So everybody, let's give a high five to all our Girl Scouts out there, and hope that you're going to contact me, and we're going to keep expanding that with our youth action team, because I think that's a great idea. There are some other questions that there's so much here in the chat right now that I want to make sure that we, I know Joy said that she had a question if there was time. I don't know, Joy, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, if you're still with us.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yay. Okay. Hi. Okay, so I was just wondering about the plastic grocery bags, for example. I thought that perhaps every grocery store was supposed to have like some sort of bin outside to recycle your plastic bags. And I take my own, of course, but I was just wondering, because people don't even know that trash bags don't get recycled. Like, they think you know, oh, just stick it in your blue bin. And so I asked Sprouts, like, where's your bin? And they didn't know, like, they didn't have an answer. So I emailed them because their website says that every location has a container of some sort where you can recycle your plastic bags. When I finally got a response, they said, oh, it's because COVID something, something, which I'm like, I don't know about that, because PetSmart did have a recycling thing. So I was just like, man, people don't even know. And then like Vaughn's didn't have one, Sprouts don't have one. Like, how do we recycle them, or what can I do? I was like, how do I get people to sign the paper? Like, I just want to do something.
Well, I think that's a good thing to bring up. I mean, Lisa, you're saying that the waste management does not recycle at all.
Well, there's no markets for it. A lot of the plastics, even the ones and twos that we consider that are very recyclable, we have to pay to get rid of those. So, because we can't put them in the landfill. So number 4 is there's just no markets. In other words, yeah, we can collect them. Those stores you're talking about can collect the bags, but there's nothing we can do with them. And here's actually the crux of the problem is that, you know, we're building all these natural gas plants to make more plastics. They just, just fast tracked a bunch of them during the Trump administration. And there's actually literally hundreds of them that are being slated because, you know, through fracking and whatever, it's very abundant in the United States. So what are we going to do with it? We're going to make more plastics with it. So we've got all these plastics, but, you know, we really are not recycling. And because the virgin plastic is so abundant and dirt cheap, if you're Coke or plastic bag manufacturer, or whomever, you're going to want to use dirt cheap, clean virgin resin, not recycled plastic, which is dirty and probably is going to cost more. I mean, even if they have it clean, it's still going to be, it's just not going to be as good of a product than getting it virgin. So there's no incentive. Now, the state of California just passed a bill that's requiring 15% of recycled content in plastic bottles, like for soda bottles and things. So that's hopeful. But the reality is there's going to just be so much more plastic out there. And it's just really difficult to recycle it. And there's no markets for it. So again, you can recycle all you want and put it in your container. But if no one's buying it and no one's using it to make products, and one of my biggest things that I try to tell people is we have to buy recycled. If you're not buying recycled toilet paper, paper towels, all those, you know, paper items, office paper, we're not recycling because we're going to all this trouble, but you've got to make products with it. You know, there's got to be markets. So to make recycling work. So that is probably the most important thing to remember. But, you know, more important than anything is just reduce, rethink, refuse, like you said. And I'm just telling people the same thing Cristina said is just try not to use plastics, period. We really, you know, recycling is absolutely not the answer. We can't recycle our way out of this mess.
I think we've just been told a story that it's up to you, citizens, that you're supposed to be recycling, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. And here's all these blue bins, but unfortunately, it's just there isn't any way to recycle most of that stuff.
And the whole plastics recycling industry, or the oil and gas plastic industry, you know, back in the 80s when people were starting to freak out about all the plastic, they're like, uh-oh, we got to figure out this recycling thing. They had no interest in really recycling. It was all a marketing gimmick, and the whole chasing arrows, which now they're talking about getting rid of them. Everyone thinks, oh, my bottle's recyclable. It's got the chasing arrows. All the chasing arrows does is identify the type of plastic. And the reality is, like Cristina said, only 9% of plastics ever have been recycled. So it's just kind of a big scam that we've been you know, marketed and fed to, and it's really bad. And they're just doubling down on doing more of that. So there's it's not like it's getting better, honestly. It's actually getting worse as we have just this huge proliferation of plastics out there.
And I think we're looking at climate reality, you know, developing kind of what Surfrider, you know, this idea of just asking our restaurants to make the switch. We have created like postcards that you can email to your favorite stores. Just say, please take the time to just switch, get away from the plastics and styrofoam. You know, there's tons of different takeaway boxes that are much more eco-friendly right now. And Lisa's also with the Green Business Network. And so there are grants that help restaurants do just that and give them free environmental consulting. So Lisa, please put the website in the chat, because we need to tell our businesses when we say make the switch, but here, go to Green Business Network. You're going to also have that marketing advantage. You'll be on their social media, their website, and you'll get, you know, thousands of dollars of free consulting plus a $500 grant to switch, and you'll be saving money because it is cheaper in the end to be more efficient and go green. And I think that's a big thing that we really want to focus on here at Climate Reality. We definitely want to partner with Surfrider and Lisa and Cristina. I think that would be a great thing to add to your presentation too, is, you know, here's another solution, because we don't want to just talk about the whole, you know, problem without having solutions. And unfortunately, the plastics industry is definitely not going to, is not coming up with the solutions right now. So are there any major questions that I've missed? Anybody scan the chat? Alex, Christina? I know there's a lot of questions like, if I go to a refill store, you know, are they going to fill up my bottles? Right now, you kind of have to check with them. It used to be the situation where you could bring your own bottles and they'd refill them. But I don't know exactly. I get a lot of my products, the Eco Now, shipped, and then I rinse them out and send them back to them. And so that works, but I don't know all the refill stores, what they do right now. And I had no idea about tea bags. I am heartbroken about this.
I'm so sorry.
But I'm glad, you know, and a lot of people were in the chat going, oh my gosh, I didn't know about this. But, you know, it's a process. We're not all perfect. And we just want to keep doing the things that we can do. And I think if all of us take the pledge to kind of reach out to our restaurants this week to say, hey, please come up with some eco-friendly solutions. Check out the Surfrider ocean-friendly restaurants. And, you know, the Green Business Network too is preventing thousands of pieces of plastic from getting out there again.
Justin, you can add one more thing in your tea thing. Loose leaf tea is more, it has more nutrients as well too.
True.
So, you know.
Yeah. And that's a great sustainable holiday gift too, or birthday gift. My birthday's coming up, so, you know.
When is your birthday?
Next Friday. I'm 25 still, so you know,
yes.
just staying in the 25 lane.
That's good.
And also Cristina and Michelle, all of us are available to talk at your schools or your businesses along with Lisa. We'd love to do that. That's, you know, our job is to educate. Cristina, I have supported Orange Coast Keeper too. That's one of my Giving Tuesday organizations that I love to give to, and Surfrider as well. So they're doing great work. And if we all can also try to think of a school that might need a presentation. And actually, I just heard from my son's school. So in January, Cristina, I'm going to be reaching out to you because all of them are studying environmental impacts right now. So it's a great way. And I'd love to just connect with all of you. This chat is fantastic. It's going to take me a few days to collect everything, but please email me because I want to share it, because we had a huge turnout for our RSVPs, and I'd love to do this event again. Who would love to talk about this further? Because I think we need to have Lisa also, and Michelle back, and Cristina, and I'd love to hear your stories, everybody, of your tips. And that Google Doc that we're creating will keep adding more and more ideas, because I think it's great to have a resource to go, okay, here's, you know, each week we can do little things that we shift on, we change out. I'm changing out my tea.
I would like to say that I know that Eco Now is still available for in-person refills.
Yes.
I called last week and I went to refill stuff because I was a little unsure when like tiers changed for COVID and stuff. But so they're available. You can go, you know, in store. It's like less than 5 people at a time. And then, but I think Bring Your Own Long Beach, which is another refill store over like near like Los Alamitos Bay. I think they're very particular. I went there a few months ago, but I had to like make an appointment online at first. So it's like one person and you're outside, you don't go in and then they kind of refill for you. And they also have on their website like a restaurant flyer that you can print out to leave at places too, to try to help create more of that demand of local cafes and restaurants too.
That's fantastic. I also see, is it Dana Penna who says, thank you so much for the support. I'd like to echo the invitation to reach out about this presentation. Go ahead.
Diana.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Diana, forgive me.
Diana Pena. I'm also with Coast Keeper. I was just here for in case Christina needed any tech support.
Yes, please. I think I'd really like to do this in the new year again, because I think there were a lot of people who want, and you can't hear this information enough, and it's constantly evolving. I know somebody said that they wanted to hear about the kid who invented something that was eating plastic, which I've heard about too, but that's not the only solution. We can't all just keep buying plastic because there might be something that eats it. And I've also heard the kid who's figured out how to, take styrofoam and incinerate it, but that's also on the horizon. But it's just an insane issue, and just because we don't see it, but when I lived in Thailand and Asia, it's just dumped everywhere. That's where the plastics are going, and there's a lot of communities, you see it on the street everywhere, and you just think of it multiplying. And so I think my birthday wish is if all of us can, reach out to a local store or restaurant and say, hey, we've got a solution. California Green Business Network, Orange Coast Keeper can come in and talk to your business about the gravity of the issue, because I think once we know what's really going on, we can do something about it for sure. And I think schools, if the young generation was, in power now, this would not be going on. This would be, ended. And we're giving trillions of dollars in subsidies to oil companies too, which I was shocked about. I had no idea, if they didn't have those subsidies, they would be out of business because renewable energy is cheaper, and it's just, we need to kind of level the playing field. They're all talking about, oh, it's free market, but you're really not making a free market when you're giving all these subsidies to fossil fuels. And that frontline special, I think a lot of people saw in plastics, where you just saw the decades of them doing this whole marketing campaign on Americans that, oh, just recycle, create recycling. And there was no infrastructure for it. So if you think about the real cost of a plastic bottle, it's not $1. It's not $1. It's probably hundreds of dollars for that, And I think that's another good gift is, your own water bottle that you can keep forever. That's another good one too. Any other questions or comments? Oh, and Thailand's going to kick off their plastic ban. I love that. But I think we should wrap up to everybody. Thank you. Any other questions that you have to ask before we go? Anyone? But please stay in touch. I'll put our email one more time. And please, I think let's look at February for a follow-up on this, I think, February or March. So I'll be in touch. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Have a beautiful evening.
Yay, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. And yes, please join our Zero Waste Committee, because that's where it's at for reducing plastics. And there's the link. I'll keep everything open a little bit longer so that anybody can copy the chat. But I will be doing a full big email to share with everybody too. And hopefully, Michelle, we can talk offline sometime, because I think we have some exciting things that we can do together and get the word out and the messaging out too. And Christina, I don't know how you put together that huge presentation, but it's pretty fantastic. Are you always adding to it?
Not always, but here and there, yeah. That bacteria being able to eat the plastic was new, and then a couple new innovations here and there too. I also just read a whole article, like kind of what you were saying with big oil lobbying from like the 70s about plastic recycling, where they knew that, they aren't gonna, they knew that there was no infrastructure. They knew it wasn't gonna happen. They knew virgin plastic was cheaper, but yeah, they just pushed that message on people forever, right? Thinking that recycling is the answer. And I'm happy that all of these things are coming to light. So hopefully more people kind of understand that recycling isn't the answer, and we can move forward with just trying to ditch as much plastic.
Well, it used to be like the 3 R's, right? And now, I mean, when I talk to students, I'm always saying refuse. And I bring samples. And I was then at a parents' night. I mean, this was last year, but they were like, I'm so glad you talked to our kid. They told me we're not allowed to buy any more plastic anymore. That's it. You know, because I do the kind of reusable lunchbox. I bring it in and show them how to put it together. And I'm telling you, a week later, like 20 kids showed up with a whole different lunchbox. I was, you know, and this was at Santa Ana Magnolia Science Academy, and I was really surprised they were, and that's where we want you to speak to. So
that'd be perfect. Yeah, when we were able to do like our Kids Ocean Day program, that's what we tell them too when they all come to do their beach cleanup. We really try to encourage that. And yeah, we've been trying to work on grants, trying to provide reusables for students in that program and things like that. But it really does need to be like a multi-pronged approach where there's like government incentives helping businesses to make those switches, where we have policies in place like banning, you know, new styrofoam being produced and certain plastics being produced, and then consumer demand increasing all of that.
I wanted to ask Michelle before she went. Now, how did you get involved with Surfrider?
I actually heard about it in high school. I went to high school in Pasadena, so it's really far from the ocean. So there's a student club, but we didn't do much because it was a very difficult school. And then when I moved back, I lived in New York for a few years, then I moved back here and decided to live by the beach. So that's when I got involved again.